Most people wake up every morning already trapped, not by walls, not by limits, but by their own comfort. They live inside invisible boundaries shaped by fear disguised as safety. Every day they choose comfort over courage and then wonder why nothing changes. You see, the truth is this: your life expands in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty you're willing to face. Growth doesn't happen in the calm, it happens in the chaos. You don't find your strength when everything is easy. You discover it when you're trembling, sweating, terrified, and you still move forward anyway. Every time you do the thing that scares you, make the call, speak your truth, chase the dream, you reclaim a piece of your power. Fear stops controlling you and you start controlling it. That's how transformation begins. So today, I want to challenge you, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Do one thing that scares you, one small act of courage that says, I refuse to live small. Because the moment you face what you fear most, life starts bending in your favor. Fear is one of the most misunderstood emotions we experience. Most people see it as a stop sign, a signal to pull back, stay safe, and avoid risk. But in reality, fear is a compass. It points directly toward the very thing that holds the power to transform you. When you feel that tension, that hesitation, that quickening in your chest, it's not a warning of danger, it's a signal of direction. It's life whispering, go there. Because behind every fear you face lies a version of you that's more powerful, more confident, and more alive than the one standing here right now. Men often mistake fear for weakness. They're taught to hide it, bury it, or bulldoze through it without feeling it. But that suppression becomes a silent prison. It limits their ability to connect, to love deeply, to take risks that matter. When a man finally learns to face his fear, instead of denying it, he unlocks a strength that isn't about domination, it's about presence. Fear becomes fool. It sharpens his instincts, raises his awareness, and turns hesitation into hunger. That's where authentic masculine power begins. Not in the absence of fear, but the decision to walk through it consciously. Women, on the other hand, are often conditioned to feel fear as self-doubt. The quiet voice that says, you're not ready yet, or what will they think? That inner dialogue keeps them playing small even when their intuition screams for more. But when a woman recognizes that her fear is not a limitation but an invitation, everything changes. She starts using that fear as feedback, a signal that she's stepping into her expansion. Her energy shifts from hesitation to expression, from waiting for permission to creating her own path. Fear then becomes her ally, guiding her toward her highest potential. What's powerful is that both men and women experience fear through different stories, but the root is the same. It's about uncertainty. The unknown scares us because our brains are wired to protect, not to evolve. Our minds crave control, but growth lives in surrender. So when fear rises, it's not a threat to your safety, it's a challenge to your identity. It's asking, are you willing to let go of who you were to become who you could be? That's the question most people avoid. And that's why they stay stuck. Every major breakthrough in life starts with a confrontation with fear. The man who leaves the job that drains him, the woman who finally speaks her truth, the person who decides to love again after being broken. In those moments, fear doesn't disappear, transforms. It becomes a compass guiding you toward your purpose. If you follow it, not run from it, it will lead you to places your comfort zone never could. Because real freedom isn't found in avoiding fear, it's found in dancing with it every single day. Comfort is seductive. It lulls you into believing that everything is fine when deep down, you know you're capable of so much more. It's warm, familiar, and easy, but that's exactly why it's dangerous. Comfort is the silent killer of dreams. It's not pain that destroys people, it's the slow decay that comes from settling. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you trade your potential for temporary ease. You silence the voice inside that says, there's more for you. And over time, that silence becomes unbearable because the human spirit was never designed to live in safety. It was built to grow. Men are especially vulnerable to the trap of comfort because society tells them that stability equals success. Get the job, earn the paycheck, build the routine, and then just maintain. But maintaining kills momentum. The fire that once drove them to prove themselves, to conquer, to lead slowly dims. They wake up one day with everything they thought they wanted, but none of the passion they once had. True masculinity isn't found in maintaining the familiar. It's found in constantly expanding the edge. A man who embraces discomfort, who chooses growth over ease, becomes unstoppable as hunger returns, his presence deepens, and his sense of purpose reignites because challenge reawakens his primal drive to evolve. Women face comfort in a different, yet equally powerful way. For many, comfort becomes the mask of control, the illusion that if everything stays predictable, nothing can go wrong. But that predictability also suffocates their intuition and creative power. When a woman stays in what feels safe, she often loses connection to the wild. Expressive force within her. Her greatness is born when she steps into the unknown, when she allows herself to risk rejection, to fail, to be seen in her authenticity. That's when her radiance becomes magnetic, not because she's fearless, but because she's alive. Discomfort is the space where her self-worth evolves beyond what anyone else can define. Comfort doesn't always look like laziness. Sometimes it looks like being busy. People fill their days with distractions, obligations, endless scrolling, and excuses just to avoid the feeling of discomfort that comes from confronting their truth. But here's the secret: discomfort is a mirror. It shows you exactly where you need to grow. The moments you resist the most, the conversation you avoid, the decision you delay, the risk you fear, those are the moments that hold the key to your next level. Growth doesn't come wrapped in convenience, it comes wrapped in chaos. The truth is, comfort and greatness cannot coexist. You can't evolve and stay safe at the same time. Every person who's ever achieved something extraordinary had to choose the unknown over the easy path. They had to risk being misunderstood, doubted, even criticized, but that's the price of expansion. The moment you choose challenge over comfort, you take back your power. Because comfort will keep you alive, but only discomfort will make you feel alive. Courage isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. It's not a gift reserved for the few, it's a muscle that grows stronger every time you choose action over hesitation. Most people wait for courage to show up before they move, but that's not how it works. You move first and courage follows. The more you face your fears, the more your nervous system learns that you can survive them. You start training your mind to see discomfort not as danger, but as proof that you're expanding. Just like lifting weights builds muscle, facing fear builds power. And every time you practice courage, you raise your standard for what you're capable of. For men, courage often gets twisted into a performance of toughness, as if being brave means feeling nothing. But real courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act even when your voice shakes and your hands tremble. Men are conditioned to believe that vulnerability weakens them, but the opposite is true. The man who admits he's scared yet moves forward anyway has already conquered half the battle. He's no longer owned by fear, he owns it. Courage, for him, becomes an act of integrity, a commitment to live aligned with what he values, not what he's comfortable with. Every risk he takes, every boundary he breaks, every truth he speaks grows his capacity for leadership, presence, and love. That's the kind of courage that builds legacies. Women experience courage through a different lens, one that's deeply emotional and intuitive. For many women, courage isn't about fighting external battles, it's about breaking internal patterns. It's the courage to speak up when it's easier to stay silent, to stand firm in self-worth when the world tells them to shrink, to chase their dreams when others expect them to serve someone else's. That kind of courage is raw, emotional, and real. It's the daily decision to trust their intuition even when logic says, play it safe. It's stepping into visibility after years of hiding. It's choosing self-expression over approval. Each time a woman practices courage, she reclaims her voice, her freedom, and her power to lead not from force, but from truth. What people often forget is that courage is built through repetition. You don't become brave once and stay that way forever. You become brave every day by facing small fears consistently. Having that difficult conversation, asking for what you deserve, setting the boundary that scares you. Saying yes to an opportunity that intimidates you. Those daily decisions, those small, rewire your identity. They teach your brain that fear isn't fatal, it's feedback. The more you lean into that sensation, the more resilience you build. Eventually, what once terrified you becomes second nature, and you start seeking bigger challenges because your comfort zone has expanded. Courage thrives on momentum. The moment you stop exercising it, it weakens. That's why people who avoid risk for too long feel trapped. Not because life got smaller, but because they did. Their world shrinks to fit their fears. But when you commit to using courage daily, your world expands. You begin to trust yourself on a deeper level. You stop waiting for the right moment and start creating it. Courage teaches you to move before you feel ready, to speak before you're certain, to act before the path is clear. And that habit, that muscle memory, is what separates people who live fully from those who just exist. There's a shift that happens when you live this way. You stop needing motivation because courage becomes automatic. You no longer wait for external permission to move forward. You generate your own power from within. Men and women alike find their balance in that space. The man stepping into vulnerability without losing strength, the woman stepping into strength without losing softness. That is what daily courage looks like, a practice of expansion, a discipline of the heart. And the more you use it, the more unstoppable you become. Anxiety is not your enemy. It's untapped energy trapped inside you, waiting to be redirected. Most people treat anxiety as something to escape, suppress, or medicate away. But what if anxiety isn't something broken in you? What if it's just power with no direction? The same physiological response that happens when you're terrified, the racing heart, the adrenaline, the shallow breath, is almost identical to what happens when you're excited. The difference isn't in the feeling itself, but in the meaning you attach to it. When you shift that meaning, you stop being ruled by anxiety and start using it as fuel. That's how you turn fear into focus, panic into purpose, and tension into transformation. For men, anxiety often hides behind anger, control, or distraction. Many are taught that showing fear or nervousness means weakness, so they bury it under toughness or avoidance. But what they're really doing is letting that energy stagnate. When a man suppresses anxiety, it doesn't disappear, it festers. It eats at his confidence, clouds his decision-making, and disconnects him from his power. But when he learns to reinterpret anxiety as energy, as his body gearing up for action, everything changes. That nervous charge he feels before a big move, that restlessness before a challenge, that internal friction, it's not a warning, it's preparation. His physiology is ready to perform. The key is to channel that tension into forward motion instead of resistance. Because a man in motion can't be trapped by anxiety, he's too busy using it to build momentum. For women, anxiety often takes on the voice of self-doubt, the constant overthinking, the need to get everything just right, the emotional overload that comes from carrying everyone else's expectations. That anxiety is rarely weakness, it's often intuition on overdrive. It's energy that hasn't been grounded into expression. When a woman starts to move that energy through creativity, through communication, through courage, she reclaims her power. The same sensitivity that once made her anxious becomes the source of her strength. It sharpens her awareness, deepens her empathy, and gives her the ability to read situations others can't. Her challenge isn't to silence the anxiety, but to give it direction, to turn that inner noise into inspired action. Anxiety is your body saying, there's more inside you than you're expressing. It's the internal alarm that goes off when your potential is being suffocated by your comfort zone. It's your system demanding expansion. But most people misread that signal and pull back instead of pushing through. They think the discomfort means stop, when it really means step up. If you reframe anxiety as energy with a message, you start using it as a guide instead of a barrier. The moment you feel anxious, your body is giving you data. You care, you're invested, you're stretching beyond your limits. That's not weakness. That's evolution happening in real time. The way to turn anxiety into energy is through movement, physical, emotional, and mental. The body holds tension until it's released. That's why motion is medicine. When you're anxious, don't freeze, move. Breathe deeply, shift your physiology. Speak, write, act, sweat, express. The moment you move your body, you interrupt the pattern of fear. You take control of the energy instead of letting it control you. Every great performer, athlete, and leader understands this before stepping into pressure. They don't try to calm down. They channel that nervous intensity into presence. They use it to heighten awareness, to sharpen focus, to ignite drive. Anxiety becomes their activation signal. Both men and women can transform anxiety by changing their internal questions. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what if this feeling is just my body preparing me to win? Instead of saying, I can't handle this, say, this energy means I'm growing. That shift in language rewires your emotional response. It stops the spiral and turns it into a surge. Because when you focus on possibility instead of fear, the same energy that once paralyzed you starts propelling you forward. Anxiety is simply potential energy. It's raw power waiting for direction. The truth is, the most successful, fulfilled people in the world feel anxiety too. The difference is they've trained themselves to associate that feeling with readiness, not danger. They've learned that anxiety doesn't mean something's wrong, it means something's happening. They've taught their nervous system to interpret uncertainty as opportunity. When a man feels his heart pounding before taking a risk, he sees it as fuel for action. When a woman feels the rush before speaking her truth, she recognizes it as a sign she's aligned with something bigger than fear. The feeling is the same, the meaning is transformed. Anxiety is the signal that you're alive, alert, and about to grow. It's the moment before the leap, the breath, before the breakthrough. It's the body saying, you're on the edge of something extraordinary, and when you stop running from that edge and start standing on it with intention, you begin to realize that same energy that once made you panic is the very energy that can make you unstoppable. Transformation doesn't begin with grand gestures, it begins with small, consistent acts of bravery. The kind of bravery that doesn't make headlines, but silently rewires who you are from the inside out. Most people wait for the big moment, the perfect opportunity, the life-changing decision, the all or nothing leap. But the truth is, greatness is built in the moments no one sees. It's built every time you push through resistance, every time you silence the voice that says, not today. Those small acts of courage are like compound interest for your soul. You may not see the change instantly, but over time, they transform everything, your confidence, your relationships, your destiny. Men often think bravery means massive action, quitting the job, starting the business, facing the battle head on. But the real test of courage isn't in the dramatic, it's in the daily. It's in being honest about what you feel when it would be easier to hide behind silence. It's in choosing to show up for your family when your ego tells you to shut down. It's in admitting you're scared but deciding to move forward anyway. Those moments redefine masculinity, not as dominance, but as depth. A man grows stronger not when he hides his fears, but when he faces them with awareness. Every small act of truth, telling every risk taken in the face of uncertainty, builds his emotional muscle. Over time, that daily bravery becomes his foundation, unshakable, grounded, and real. Women, too, experience bravery in deeply personal ways. For many, it's not about the grand battles, but the subtle choices that go unnoticed. It's the courage to say no when she's been conditioned to please everyone. It's the bravery to walk away from what doesn't serve her, even when her heart still cares. It's the decision to speak her truth, to claim space in a world that's told her to stay small. Every time a woman acts with courage, even quietly, she realigns her identity. She stops living in reaction and starts living in creation. And with each small act, she sends a message to her subconscious, or I am enough. I am capable, I can handle life. That's how she builds unshakable confidence, not through perfection, but through repetition. Small acts of bravery matter because they create momentum. Courage is not a one-time event, it's a lifestyle. Every act, no matter how small, becomes a vote for the person you want to become. When you face one fear, you weaken all fears. The moment you step into discomfort, make that phone call, share that idea, confront that conversation, you teach your mind that you are in control. You prove to yourself that fear doesn't get the final say. And the more you practice this, the more your self-trust grows. Self-trust is the root of transformation. It's what allows you to take bigger risks later because you've built evidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. What's powerful about small bravery is that it compounds. One act creates another. One breakthrough opens the door to the next. You start to notice shifts. Your voice gets stronger, your presence bolder, your decisions clearer. You stop waiting for motivation because movement becomes your motivation. That's how real transformation happens, not through sudden inspiration, but through steady, fearless action. The smallest decision to show up differently today can redirect the entire course of your life. And the irony is the people who create the biggest change aren't necessarily the loudest or boldest. They're simply the ones who keep saying yes to courage, one choice at a time. The psychology behind this is simple but profound. Your brain learns through experience. Every time you face fear and survive, your nervous system rewires itself. It starts associating bravery with safety instead of threat. That's why small, repeated acts are so effective. They slowly shift your emotional blueprint. You move from anxiety to anticipation, from hesitation to hunger. What used to terrify you starts to excite you. And that shift isn't just mental, it's chemical. Your physiology begins to respond differently. More strength, more energy, more presence. You literally become more alive. Both men and women discover their true power when they stop waiting for massive moments and start honoring small victories. The man who tells his partner he's afraid of failing is being brave. The woman who decides to launch her idea despite not feeling ready is being brave. The person who chooses to show up again after disappointment is being brave. These acts might look insignificant to the world, but they build an inner architecture of strength that nothing can shake. Bravery is not about size, it's about sincerity. It's about the willingness to act when it would be easier to retreat. Each step you take into fear plants a seed of transformation, and those seeds grow into a life you were meant to live. Every person you admire, every story of greatness you've ever heard began with someone choosing courage at a single moment. One choice to speak, one choice to move, one choice to try. That's how transformation begins, not in lightning strikes, but in sparks. And those sparks come from you, from every small act of bravery that says, I will not let fear dictate my life. Because when you honor those moments, when you act despite the trembling, you set in motion a ripple effect that eventually becomes a wave strong enough to transform your world from the inside out. Life doesn't start when you're comfortable, it starts when you're challenged. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid the edge, that place where certainty fades and possibility begins. But the edge is where all growth happens. It's where fear and excitement coexist, where you're forced to let go of control and trust your potential. The edge is where life tests you, stretches you, and shows you what you're made of. It's not a place for the faint-hearted, but it's the only place where you truly feel alive. Because on the edge, you don't just exist, you evolve. Men often crave the edge, but fear losing control when they reach it. They've been conditioned to equate stability with success, so they build predictable lives that feel safe, yet silently suffocating. The truth is, a man without an edge loses his drive. That hunger to explore, to compete, to conquer challenges is what awakens his masculine energy. When he steps onto the edge in uncertainty, risk, and purpose, his instincts reawaken. He stops playing not to lose and starts playing to win. The edge demands his full presence, his full strength, his full focus. That's why so many men feel restless inside, because deep down they know they've stopped testing themselves. And when a man stops testing himself, he stops trusting himself. For women, living on the edge is often about liberation, breaking the invisible walls that keep them small, polite, or perfect. The edge calls her to embrace her power, her expression, and her wildness without apology. It's the space where she stops asking for permission to be herself. For many women, stepping onto that edge feels terrifying because it means defying expectations, risking judgment, and surrendering control. But that's exactly where her radiance is born, when she dares to live fully, to create, to speak, to love boldly. She reconnects to her feminine energy in its purest form, flow, intuition, and creation. On the edge, she becomes magnetic, not because she's fearless, but because she's fully alive. Living on the edge doesn't mean recklessness. It means embracing the unknown with intention. It's the courage to risk comfort for the sake of growth. The edge is where your identity expands, where you face the resistance between who you are and who you're becoming. It's where fear stops being your master and starts being your mentor. That's why people who live on the edge don't wait for life to happen to them. They make life happen. They take the leap, start the project, in what's no longer aligned and step into what feels alive. They understand that certainty is an illusion, that the only real security is the ability to adapt. The edge is not a destination, it's a state of being. It's the willingness to live in motion, to constantly push against your own limits. It's the refusal to settle even when things are good enough, because good enough kills greatness. When you live on the edge, you operate with urgency, passion, and purpose. You wake up each day knowing that the next moment could change everything. And instead of fearing that, you welcome it. The edge sharpens your instincts, fuels your creativity, and reminds you of what it feels like to truly be human. That's where life begins, not in comfort, not in safety, but in the exhilarating space between fear and freedom, where every heartbeat reminds you that you're still alive.